afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre, and you are tuned in to the Wake Up with Tayla Andre show, where it matters not the time of the day that we link up, but waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. What is Wake Up with Tayla Andre? Why unorthodox conversations? I want you to think outside of the box. I want you to start conducting yourself differently. I want you to question everything. I want you to believe nothing and do your own due diligence. Even if it comes from my own mouth, don't believe me. Don't believe anything I say. Do your own due diligence. Do your own research. Go ahead and look up everything. Not only do I want you to look up everything, I want you to seek outside media sources. So I know you have about 2,000 channels on your cable or your TV service, but I do want you to seek international news. I want you to seek outside of the 5 stations that we're used to, because out of those 5 stations, I've said this before, I'll say it a million times. Back in the 80s, when I was a baby, there was over 50 different 50 different companies that serviced what you watched on television. Even though there was only like 7 channels, there was 50 different companies and corporations that worked to give you the news. Today, that number is dwindled down to 6. We have 6 companies and 6 corporations that are your media source, and they all are saying the exact same thing. So you have to go outside your box, go outside the norm in order to get truth, in order to get what mainstream media isn't going to tell you. So as far as, me and the Donald don't too much get along. I don't trust or believe much of what he says, but when he talks about the media and false truths and fake news, he's very much so being honest. That's like the only thing that he knows how to be honest about. But he is telling the truth. Our news isn't the news that we deserve. It's not the news that we know. It's not the news that we trust. So, Wake Up with Tayla Andre wants nothing more but for you to do your own due diligence and start trusting yourself and be your own source of news. Don't look to the 5 to 7 channels, 25, 56, 38, but go outside the box and do your own due diligence. With that being said, we have what's in the news everywhere, net neutrality. And you probably have no idea what net neutrality is, or why it affects you, or why should I even care? But you should. Net neutrality is like a toll road. So when you're driving to and from the city streets, you're not paying a toll. That is what net neutrality looks like. Once you're on I-90, that's what not having net neutrality looks like. Having to pay more for services that should be free. Net neutrality is a basic principle that prohibits internet service providers like AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon from speeding up or slowing down or blocking content, applications, or websites. If you work for the government or if you work for a company that you can't visit Facebook, that is a form of not having net neutrality. Your company can say, I don't want you to be on Facebook while you're at work, so they can make those regulations while you're on your job. But those regulations are going to be more than just at work. It's going to be everywhere. For instance, I want to give you a couple examples. AT&T from 2007 to 2009 blocked Skype on Apple devices. They also blocked Google Voice. Why'd they do that? Well, they blocked those services because it allows you to make international calls. Now, if you have Skype on your phone or if you have Google Voice on your phone, you know that even when your phone is shut off, if you have a little bit of Wi-Fi, you can still make phone calls. So, during 2007 and 2009, Apple devices were blocked from downloading Google Voice, not even just using, but downloading and using Google Voice as well as Skype. Why? Because AT&T wanted to make a profit. They wanted you to pay them for your international calls. They wanted to make sure that even if your phone got shut off, you weren't making any calls, at least not on their phones. In 2011, Metro PCS blocked users from using any streaming app, like a Tidal, like a Netflix, any streaming app, except access to YouTube. If you don't see a problem with this, I do not know what to tell you. Couple other examples. AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint in 2011 and 2013 were working on an app very similar to Google Wallet. So they prohibited all of their users from downloading Google Wallet. Why? Because they were working on an app that was going to compete with them. Why would I allow the competitor to come in and make a dollar, make a profit, when I can block it and I'm the one making the dollar? I'm the one making the profit. This is a problem, baby. This is a huge problem. Bernie Sanders said, the internet is for sale to the highest bidder. And that's exactly what the lack of net neutrality is right now. Couple more examples, because I really want you to get this and I want this to hit home for you. In 2012, Verizon prohibited their customers from tethering. I don't know if you've ever used hotspot on your phone or tethering on your phone or allowed your phone to open, to tether, to use your computer, or allowed your phone to tether so your friend sitting next to you could use their phone or use their computer. In 2012, Verizon prohibited customers from tethering or using hotspots because they had their own service that they wanted you to use. They wanted you to pay more for the extra service. They wanted you to pay more for high speed. They wanted you to pay more to have that access. But because we had net neutrality, that was shut down. Do you see the difference now between having that consumer protection, you are the consumer, the buyer, the consumer, versus the corporation? And right now, the corporations are in complete control. AT&T in 2012 disabled iPhone users from using FaceTime because they required you to go ahead and pay extra for streaming services, like that you had to buy a separate bundle, a separate package. It was $20 a month, plus times the millions of users that they had. That $20 isn't a lot, but if your bill's already $60, now your bill's $80. Don't forget to add on tax, times all of the millions of users that they had. We had net neutrality then. Comcast owns NBC. So let's say, for instance, Comcast slows down Fox, ABC, MSNBC. They shut down everything. Why? Because we own NBC. We own NBC. So if we own NBC, we want you to go and get your news from who? NBC. Fox for what? Slow down that service. You're going to see a lot of these loading signs, and nothing is going to load. It's going to be slow. You're going to be frustrated, and you're going to say, you know what? I'll just use NBC. And that's exactly what they want you to do. Again, I want you to get this. 17 states are currently suing the FCC. Out of those 17 states, Massachusetts is one of them. Attorney General Maura Healey, her and I are not best friends because of her stance on the Second Amendment. But on this, we totally agree. Please sue them good. From Cali to New York, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, Hawaii, Virginia, even Mississippi. If you know anything about northern and southern states, you would have thought Mississippi was one of the ones who wouldn't care. They'd be in the best interest of the corporations. But even Mississippi is suing. Delaware, Trump administration just banned words. I want you to sit and think about that. As far as the CDC is concerned, the Centers for Disease Control, any official document that has to do with the up-and-coming 2018 budget cannot have the words vulnerable, diversity, fetus, science-based, evidence-based, transgender, or entitlement. I want you to fully understand, so I'm going to repeat myself. The Center for Disease Control is changing their policy for the 2018 budget. There are 7 words that are banned from any document regarding this budget. Transgendered, vulnerable, diversity, fetus, entitlement, evidence-based, science-based. I have a rant about this. The budget, okay, first and foremost, the CDC, Center for Disease Control, is the hub of everything related to your health. So migraines, headaches, Ebola, AIDS, HIV, name it. Whatever disease you can think of, whatever disease you're saying right now on your couch, that disease. Now, let's look at the money. When it comes to abortions, when it comes to sexual orientation, when it comes to vulnerable persons or people with vulnerabilities or disabilities or anything, baby, entitlement, diversity, science-based, like listen to these words. It can't be in an official document that has to do with the budget. It is science-based, it is evidence-based that if we put this chemical into this food, are you listening? It is going to cause XYZ effects for those of diverse backgrounds. Can't use those words. I want you to think, again, outside of the box. Why would these words be banned? Call me a conspiracy theorist. I call myself a conspiracy realist. Because these words being banned are not only harmful for us today, they're harmful for our children tomorrow, and they're harmful to our grandchildren in the decades to come. And I am urged to talk about vaccines. Vaccines alone, vulnerable, diversity, fetus, science-based, evidence-based. There is evidence that fetuses are in the vaccines that your children are given. Did you know that? It's evidence-based, it's fact-based, it's science-based. You can't use any of those words. That's harmful. And it's scary. And I just want you to be aware. I'm not here to scare you, but I'm here to wake you up. Right now, we are over 60 days out from what happened in Puerto Rico. Hurricane Maria happened over 60 days ago. Do you know that Puerto Ricans, 60% of Puerto Ricans still do not have electricity? 60 days later, Puerto Ricans still don't have electricity, and some people in the mountains will not have electricity until this time next year. Residents still don't have roofs over their head. Residents still don't have food and access to clean water. Right now, it is being reported that there are 55 official dead Puerto Ricans. That number is coming from the government. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what exactly is going on in Puerto Rico.
Everywhere that we go, he makes people laugh and makes people smile, and I feel like I have that quality.
He's the one who always takes me fishing.
I watch golf with him.
I watch him cook, because when I grow up, I want to be a cook too.
We have the same faces like this.
Dad is the one, when you fall, that picks you up.
That unconditional sense of presence and reassurance
is really what makes him my father.
Thank you. You got a king?
Go fish!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre. You're waking up with Tayla Andre, and a big shout out to my daddies. I love that commercial. Shout out to all of the fathers, the single fathers, the active daddies. I love daddies. I love you guys so much. Society does not give you enough credit. It's a women's world. We live in Massachusetts, but I am one of the few women that do advocate for you guys on a regular basis. So peace, love, blessings to every single last one of the fathers. Now, if you're a deadbeat, please do not accept any of those peace, loves, or blessings, and please go see your children. Right before we went to break, we were talking about Puerto Rico. Again, over 60 days ago, Maria took place, and Puerto Ricans were left without food, water, electricity, access to health care, and so much more that they were used to every day. Puerto Ricans are American citizens. They are not able to vote, so they did not vote for our current president. But I bet you if they could, he would not see a second term. Over 60% of Puerto Ricans still today do not have access to electricity. Over 60% of Puerto Ricans do not have a roof over their head. Remember, when the hurricane came, a lot of houses were destroyed. The U.S. government left them for dead, or at least that's what they feel like. There is a report called Through Our Eyes, Puerto Rico, that documents people that shower in the rain, that collect rainwater for drinking water. The community efforts are just that, community efforts. FEMA has not been there to help. FEMA has contracted other companies that have contracted third parties to assist Puerto Ricans. That effort has not been made. There are 55 officially dead Puerto Ricans due to Hurricane Maria, but the unofficial number is over 5,000. That's people that were unable to get clean water, clean access to health care, access to anything that would have allowed them to continue their life. So there have been over 900 cremations. These cremations have been labeled as natural causes of death. They really don't know the number. We really don't know the number of how many people have died in Puerto Rico. They haven't even made it to the center of the island to actually take a consensus of the statistics of what's going on. I watched a documentary the other day on what's taking place in Puerto Rico, and this is a documentary that was created by a woman who shared it on Facebook, and she has daily contact with Puerto Ricans from different parts of the island. And I can't tell you how broken my heart is. Children have died, elders have died, simply for not having access to clean running water. One of the things that they're doing in Puerto Rico is taking pipes and having water from streams come into the pipes and flow down into the city. So you have like this little hose of water from a stream, and people are using that. There are lines from Sam's Club, there's lines from gas stations that go on for miles. It takes people 4 hours to wait in line to get any money out of the bank, only to be told that the bank doesn't have access to electricity and Wi-Fi, so nobody is able to access money. If you can't take your money out of the bank and you don't have a credit card, you don't have a debit card, you don't have checks, how are you able to purchase the gas you need if you're lucky enough to have a generator? Or the gas you need to try and go see a family member that may be 65 miles away. The tragedy that is taking place in Puerto Rico right now, no one else is reporting on it. The numbers that I gave you, did you know that? Puerto Ricans are saying that it is a forced exodus. Over 130,000 Puerto Ricans have come to America. Again, they are American citizens, but they do not vote. The Jones Act is an act that is maritime law. For those who don't know what maritime law is, it's marine law, it's ocean law, it's law of imports, exports. And the Jones Act controls shipments. From Puerto Rico can only receive aid from America. It has to be American ships, American staff, and American goods and services. Puerto Rico cannot, due to the Jones Act, cannot receive any international aid. And there are Spain, Portugal, Morocco, there's countries all over the world that want to give and help and service Puerto Rico, that want to go to Puerto Rico and help them with whatever it is they need. But because of the Jones Act, a maritime law of years ago, that holds no weight today. What is our government doing? What is our president doing? Throwing paper towels? I heard a clip of him saying, there's only 55 dead. That's better than thousands. Again, 900 cremations in the past 60 days. They believe unofficially it's over 5,000 that have passed. My heart is heavy, and there is so much going on in the world that I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to Ghana President Nana Addo. So Nana Addo was standing beside the French President Emmanuel Macron, who was asked a question: is France going to increase its aid to Ghana? And of course, Emmanuel gave a very succumb answer, gave a very general reply. And then came the rebuttal from President Nana Addo, who said, and I quote, the question was, will France increase aid to Africa? We must get away from the mindset that what France can do for us. We can no longer continue to policy for ourselves in our country, in our region, in our continent, on the basis of whatever supply the Western world can give us. It has not worked, and it will not work. History has shown us that it has not worked for us to rely on aid from another country, from the Western world, from France, from Europe. It has not worked. It will not work in the future. We want Africans to stay in Africa, and we need to work together. I need to give a huge snap. What is it, 3 round of a snap? Huge snap. Because how many other African presidents are coming out and speaking up against foreign aid? I believe it was 3 years ago when France's president even stated that if it wasn't for Africa, we wouldn't have the resources that we currently have. If it wasn't for Africa, we'd be the one in need of aid. So if you guys are the ones that are stealing from the poor to give to the rich and then giving us the crumbs back, how about I don't give you all that you want and allow you to take all that you need to just simply give me the crumbs of the crown that I gave you? It infuriates me. It frustrates me because I know I've been to Africa. I went to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and the amount of love and the amount of joy and the amount of happiness people that have absolutely nothing have surpasses any amount of wealth here in America, Europe, or anywhere in the developed worlds. We don't have that happiness. And to know that we just take and have always taken from Africa and dug her grave and then danced on it. It's my personal opinion, but that's how I feel. There's a new study that finds that news outlets are biased. I don't think we needed a study to know that. We didn't need a study to understand how biased the news is. We didn't need a study to understand that they are constantly downplaying our achievements, consistently misrepresenting the black family. We didn't need a study. But there is a study called The Color of Change in Family Story. Travis Dixon of the University of Illinois looked over, for a year, over 800 news stories nationally, using all of your names that you can think of when it comes to news. And he found that the black family is represented as poor 59% of the time. But in reality, only 17% of us are actually poor. When it comes to our counterparts, as far as whites are concerned, they are represented 17% as poor, but actually make up 66% of the poor. These numbers go on and on as far, well, the discrepancies in those numbers go on and on as far as violence is concerned, as far as criminal behavior is concerned, same as far as fathers not being in the picture. Do you know how many of our dads are in the picture, but we are represented in the news as being fatherless? I don't have that number in front of me, but baby, let me tell you, our families are just as strong as they were in the 60s. Our families were just as strong as they were in the 80s, prior to the crack epidemic. And that's what we need to start focusing on. The strength and the love and the prosperity of our people, all our people. We believe what we believe about ourselves because of what the media tells us about ourselves. That's why I'm here to tell you otherwise. Do your own research, do your own due diligence, and I promise you will be very surprised of how strong and how together and how unified we are and have been. We're sort of like Puerto Rico, where the community is helping the community. And there was even a quote from one of the Puerto Ricans that was reporting live that said, Puerto Rico is helping Puerto Rico because America has left us to die. Thank you, Travis Dixon. Thank you, University of Illinois, for putting pen to paper on something that we already knew. We already know that we are considered least when it comes to media, that we are disregarded, disrespected. What can you do about it? A lot. Stop watching it. I personally have a problem with, here in Boston, we have billboards all over the city for News 5 and News 7. I want you to pay attention to these billboards that carry the news, that promote the news. And I want you to see how many of those billboards have a person of color on them. I personally have tweeted them. I've personally called them. I've emailed them. I think it is completely disgusting how we are not represented. I want to give a huge shout out to the African American, the black, the Moorish, whatever you want to call us. I want to give a huge shout out to those that are represented, even though they may be at odd times of night and they don't get the desk at 5 or they're not at the desk at 7 and they're not in the mainstream, but they're still there and they're still represented. I want to say thank you to Liz Walker for being the first. I remember when her and Jim Boyd were the face, and I used to wake up to them at 5 o'clock in the morning. I thought it was beautiful to be able to see a representation of me, and I still think it's beautiful. And I don't know what happened that we've now gone backwards, because right now there isn't a representation of what we look like when it comes to news or when it comes to a lot of television. We're not represented positively anywhere. And I'm not quite understanding why. Did you know? Whew, we got a long list of did you know, but really quickly, I want to point to the books that you guys just saw. So this is a collection of my books. I am an avid reader, and I wanted to share them with you because why not? So Black's Law's Dictionary is absolutely amazing. Black's Law's Dictionary has all of the words that a regular dictionary would have, but it also has legal terminology. And that legal terminology has, there's a lot of words that will help you understand what law is. It'll help you understand when you listen to the news and they start using terms that you're not familiar with, that you don't understand. I promise you, get you a Black Law's Dictionary. I bought it online and it was worth every penny. Raising a Black Scholar, a curriculum, is an amazing book that if you're interested in homeschooling, it will tell you from kindergarten, first grade, all the way up to 12th grade what your children should be learning. As far as curriculum is concerned, what can you be teaching your children at home? What could you implement into your school or ask your school to take a look at? Next is Queen Afua's Sacred Women, The Guide to Healing the Feminine Body, Mind, and Spirit. This is a beautiful book for all of my queens. Culture and Consumption, Marketing, Meeting, and Brand Management. This was a book that I read in college, and it's a book that I still kept. I want to know how many of you still have your college books. It was an investment, so you should have been keeping them. But I kept this one by McCracken for one purpose and one purpose only, because it explains why we are so conditioned to media. It explains why we are conditioned to believe what we believe as far as entertainment is concerned, as far as the importance of learning is concerned, as far as why do we consume so much? Why do I see this commercial and want to buy? It really broke down for me, and even if you're not in marketing, at least understand why you spend your dollar the way that you do. Next, Haiti, A Slave Revolution. I want to give a shout out to all the ICNs. Shout out to Haiti. I claim Haitian because my birthday is on Flag Day, May 18th. And it just really goes into depth about what happened with Haiti, what really took place, the slave revolution, and how the slaves gained their independence. On top of that is the Merkaba. The Great Pyramid is the Tree of Life, Kaaba, by Terry Nielsen. She is located here in Boston. She's absolutely amazing. This is one of, I believe, 30 books of hers, and the books are everything Egyptian, everything Black, everything to open up your soul to who you actually are. And I really appreciate this book because it helps you understand self. It helps you understand language. It helps you understand the words that we use. And I'm going to say something that may make you uncomfortable. When you were in school, you took spelling, right? But did you know that spelling is a form of spells? Words are a form of creation. Even in the Bible, it said, God said, let there be light. And then there was light. So one of the things that I love about the Kaaba is that it breaks down for us how exactly our words are creating, how exactly our words are creative, how and why everything that you say then comes into fruition. Everything that you think about comes into reality. Next, we have the Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. That was probably one of my favorite interviews of all time. You can listen to that if you search up Tayla Andre. I think I forgot my name for a second. State of Terrorism in the United States by Frederick Garou. That's a great book if you want to learn about why we have army forces all over the world. On the Way to Finding Your Soulmate, again, another book by Terry Nielsen. if you're single or if you're in a relationship, that's a great book. And Rebuilding the Black Infrastructure by Professor Devin Robinson. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a quick break. I am Tayla Andre.
They say that when you're facing extreme danger, your life flashes before you. If you think that's sad, consider facing it before you even have enough life to flash before your eyes. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Deaths and injuries can be prevented by using the right car seat. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to know what is appropriate for each age and size.
Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre, and Waking Up with Tayla Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day that we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. Right before we took that break, we were talking about Rebuilding the Black Infrastructure by Professor Devin Robinson. I brought him to Boston a few months ago, and he was talking about rebuilding our infrastructure, rebuilding that Black Wall Street, and how do we take control of our businesses, taking control of our society, our nation within a nation. And it's an amazing book that helps you understand where our infrastructure actually got lost, as far as once upon a time us having a Black Wall Street. And for those that are wondering, this is an amethyst. I love my stones, if you can't tell, and they are grounding and supportive. And we will have our next show talking about elements and things on earth that can help you, guide you, ground you, that you probably didn't even know about. Let's talk about the things you didn't know as far as news is concerned. In 2013, the Census Bureau said that it was going to ban the word Negro, yet it's 2017, and on most federal forms, Negro is still an option that you check off. It might say Afro-American and then hyphen Negro. Are you a Negro? I sure am not. Flint still does not have water. Clean water. Alabama has towns that still don't have plumbings. People are digging ditches in order to have excrements wasted in their backyard. That's a huge health hazard. That's going back to the CDC. 6,000 to 23,000, I said this earlier, shout out to all of my daddies, up to 23,000 men commit suicide every year because of family court. 23,000 men every year commit suicide due to family court. I'm going to say it a third time because repetition is the mother of all learning, and I don't think you got it the first two times. Up to 23,000 men, Black, white, Asian, West Indian, African, here in America commit suicide due to being in family court and having to deal with these laws that do not make common sense and in the best interest of the child. Black women in America are over 300 times more likely to die during childbirth. This is a recent study that was conducted in an interview that I had with Reginald, but I'm not even going to butcher his name because I am a professional at butchering names. But he was on my show, on the Wake Up with Tayla Andre show on 102.9. And back in the 70s, 9 out of every 100,000 women died during childbirth. And you would think with all of the healthcare increases of knowledge that like all of the advances that we've had, you would think that that number would have dwindled, right? It has actually skyrocketed. In 2016, 18.9% of women died during childbirth. Again, in the 70s, that number was simply 9. Today, it's 18.9. But when it comes to black women today, that number is 56 for every 100,000. 300% more likely to die during childbirth than a white woman. The Mormon Church documents claim that if you masturbate, you'll turn gay. According to Cali Department of Health, radiation from your cell phone causes cancer and infertility. If you sleep with your phone within arm's length, you are at a higher risk of being infertile, men and women, as well as an increased chance of getting cancer. You are at the highest risk during low service and media streaming. So a lot of us that are holding on to our phones while we're media streaming or holding on to our phones while our phones are charging, if you have not noticed like you're getting cramps in your hand, or if you put your phone on your hip and you notice like the warmth, that radiation, be mindful when it comes to your children that are sleeping with their phones right next to their head. It plays a role. There are 70 cases in 17 states and 22 hospitalizations of people that have a disease caused by letting dogs lick them in the mouth. I think we know who has that disease. Most of the cases came from people that had recently had contact with puppies at a pet store, but I can almost guarantee, though I am not sure, that we are not one of those people that let dogs lick us in the mouth. That is one of the nasty. Why do you do that? That is so nasty. Dogs have the cleanest. No, they don't. And this case right here proves it to be true. Self-itis is a real thing. And it came out in 2014. And there are borderline, acute, and chronic self-itis cases that if you take 6 or more pictures of yourself a day, you have chronic self-itis. Do you take 6 or more pictures of yourself? Are you posting 6 or more pictures of yourself? You have self-itis, and you might want to seek help. And actually, you might want to do your due diligence and see if your insurance company will help cover so you can go to therapy. There's nothing wrong with believing in oneself and knowing that you're beautiful and knowing that you're gorgeous. It's completely different when you have to prove to others that you are. Check your phone. If you take 6 or more pictures a day, baby, you might have self-itis. Whew, shout outs. I want to give a shout out, Lord of mercy, to Mignon Clyburn. She is the first African-American female FCC commissioner. She also spoke out vehemently against this vote. She was one of the 2 that spoke out against the net neutrality. There's 5 votes that took place with net neutrality. 3 of them voted against what President Barack Obama had put in place, and 2 against it. So the 3 that voted for it, of course, was the commissioner board, or the president of the commission. And I have no idea why President Barack Obama put him on the commission when he used to work for Verizon. It makes no sense to me why he would ever put him on the commission when he worked for Verizon. He never worked for the consumer, he worked for the corporation. And the FCC was put in place for the consumer regarding communications, to be fair and equitable. Black women and men in Alabama came out in droves to elect Doug Jones over Roy Moore. There is a 16-year-old, I know you've seen the viral video of him getting into Harvard. I want to say way to go to all the black excellence. He's not the only one. There's a few other African Americans of younger age, under the ages of 18 and 19, that recently got into Harvard and Ivy League schools. I want to give a huge shout out to Faith Naturals, who's the only one that's able to create products to make my skin withstand this horrible winter weather that dries out everything. Also, I want to give a shout out to the LA City Council who agreed on a 13-0 vote. It was unanimous, baby. $300,000 to settle the case of Waukesha Wilson, who died in police custody. They went ahead and reported that she did not have suicidal thoughts. She was not on suicidal watch, but yet the women that shared a jail cell with her said otherwise. Said no, she was very suicidal. The minute she stepped in, she took her shirt off, wrapped it around her neck, and that is how she succumbed as well. $300,000 to the family. We have to do better. Right now, there are no police officers that are trained to deal with mental health. This is an issue. This is a problem. This is something that we need to be mindful of and something that we need to have our voices heard on. 30% of prisoners are in contact with their family. 30% of prisoners are in contact with their family. Again, 30% of prisoners. Hold on, let me switch the numbers so you get it. Over 70% of prisoners do not have contact with their family due to the high communication bills. Right now, one of the things that the FCC does is monitor all forms of communication, whether it's television, radio, or telephones. And as far as prisoners are concerned, they do not have access to communication the way you and I do. They cannot pick up the phone and call a family member. They cannot pick up the phone and call friends. They cannot pick up the phone and call the 2.7 million children that are affected by the 70% of prisoners that do not have access to their family members due to the high cost of phone calls. That moment of silence is for every child who feels like their father forgot about them. Every wife that feels like their husband just didn't call because he got a boo in jail. It's for every family member, every mother who couldn't speak to their daughter. We are social creatures. We are human beings. The one thing that makes us different from the animals is that we are social, which I really don't believe to be true, because if you've ever seen monkeys interact, if you've ever seen animals interact, if you've ever seen the videos of when a dog dies, the other dogs come and mourn. Same thing with the eagles. Same thing with the swan. Recently saw a video of a swan that was sick and was released back into the wild after it was nursed to health. And her partner did the swan dance, did the mating dance as soon as she was released. 70% of prisoners, and I don't care what their crime was, I really don't. There's no reason why we should put human beings, social human beings, in solitary confinement. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Khalif Broda. If you have not watched the Khalif Broda story, please do. I cried like he was my own son. It was heart-wrenching that they put him in solitary confinement in Rikers Island. For those who don't know, Rikers Island is not a prison. It's a jail. What's the difference between prison and jail? I didn't know either until I watched the Khalif Broda story. Prison is when you were sentenced. Prison is when you were found guilty of whatever it is you were charged with. Jail is when you are being held. You're being held. And some people are held without bail, or some people are held with bail, but can't pay, like Khalif Broda, could not pay the $2,000 to get out of jail. Colin Kaepernick recently visited Rikers Island. I interviewed a woman who used to work at Rikers Island. Her story brought me to tears. You can look for that story online if you Google TaylaAndre and Rikers Island. It was one of my best shows, one of my most memorable shows, where The psychologist, who was a Rikers Island psychologist, talked about the violence that took place there. How many people didn't have the $600 to pay the bail, so had to wait for their arraignment, had to wait to be seen before a judge, and every time their court date came up, it got pushed back for some godforsaken reason. I couldn't imagine sitting in jail, rotten, because you can't pay the fine to just come back when it's your court date. Colin Kaepernick went to visit prisoners, inmates, withheld persons, to offer inspiration for them. But yet the guards only saw one thing. When Colin Kaepernick wore those socks that depicted police officers as pigs, that's all they thought about. That's all they could bring up. That's all that was important to them. Now he's causing problems for us, coming in here, making it harder for us to work. He went in there to inspire them, to tell them to stay positive, be motivated. You won't be here forever. Do the right thing so you can get out. But again, all they could think about was the socks that he wore depicting police as pigs. Technically, baby, you were a correctional officer, not even a police officer. So I don't even know why your feelings hurt. It is what it is. I am Tayla Andre. Waking up with Tayla Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day that we link up, but about waking up your third eye to unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. I want you to think outside of the box. I want you to start reading books that you typically wouldn't even hear about. I want you to stop listening to the mainstream media. I want you to do your due diligence. I want you to find me online, TaylaAndre. I want you to come to an understanding of who you are, and then let's talk about it. Again, TaylaAndre. I want to give a huge shout out to the woman who keeps me beautiful. That is Faithlyn of Faith Naturals. She is located at 66A South Street, and you could find me there laying on the floor most days because the energy in there feels absolutely amazing. And that's where I get my energy cleanses from, and I advise that you do too, because the people that we come in contact with, whether at work or whether at school, they leave with us an impression, a spiritual impression that you may not be able to see, that you can't feel, but it's an energy that may be heavy. I am Tayla Andre. You are tuned into the Wake Up with Tayla Andre show. I want you to always express your truest self, baby. And, hold on, you backwards. I want you to always express your truest self, and I want you to be yourself because there is no one on earth that can be you. I love you, I appreciate you, and I hope you have an amazing day. Mwah.